Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Faster Way podcast. I am thrilled to be here today with my friend, Dr. Jess Peatross. Dr. Jess, thank you so much for being with us.
I am honored. Thanks for having me.
Not only are we now friends, but we are neighbors, which is so exciting.
We are. We live really close to each other, you guys. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, shout out for Tampa Bay. So many incredible wellness professionals have recently moved to Tampa Bay, and I love having an awesome ecosystem of wellness professionals here. You're 18 minutes from me, so we're going to be besties. We already are. Dr. Jess, what I love to start with is when and why you entered into the wellness industry. And I know for you, this is quite the story. We want to hear all the juicy details.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder how I got put on this wild journey. So I got into the wellness space and I never thought that I would be someone who would kind of jump ship like I did. I am a traditionally trained conventional medical doctor. So I got my MD at the University of Louisville in Kentucky, which is not necessarily the epitome of holistic health. So at the time, that was almost 20 years ago. I'm telling my age. But at the time, I didn't know anything about chiropractors or naturopaths or anything about root cause medicine. I bought everything they taught me. I drank the Kool-Aid. I got my flu shot every year. I ate the hospital cafeteria food. I did all that stuff. And it wasn't until I went through a personal divorce and pain in my life where I hit rock bottom. I love the saying, what Rumi says, the cracks are where the light enters. And that's what happened to me. Often when things are good, you don't want to change. It's when things are bad. And so when I hit rock bottom, I started to see a different perspective. At the same time, I picked up from Kentucky and I moved across the country to Oregon, which is very different in its belief patterns and beliefs about what causes illness. So that rubbed off on me after I was immersed in that energy. And I started to complain around the hospital. And they labeled me a disruptive physician. And I was probably annoying. I would go down to the cafeteria and say, why do we have factory farm meat and Cheetos and Coke and Pepsi in the hospital and we're feeding this to cancer patients? This is not okay. This is not the oath I took. And eventually they set me down and said, you can't do this anymore or you can't work for us. And so I didn't have kids or a husband or anyone else but myself to rely on. So I said I quit. And at that point in time, I made a third of what I used to make in the hospital while I was training under a naturopath and kind of learning the ropes about a whole new perspective that has to do with health, that empowers people. And so, I really probably wouldn't have jumped ship as quickly had I known how hard it was going to be. But in the end, everything works out as it's supposed to. And now I'm so grateful for that journey. I feel like I actually help people.
Yeah, root cause medicine. At Faster Way, we are a big fan of functional medicine, naturopathic doctors. We actually have several naturopathic doctors who are also Faster Way coaches. We have functional medicine professionals who are Faster Way coaches. We also have MDs who have said, wow, I started the Faster Way and I learned about nutrition and that's helped me help my patients. And I often say most doctors truly become doctors because they want to help their patients. They many times simply don't have the tools in their toolkit in order to do so. And I feel for doctors. I have a colleague right now who is transitioning from being a hospitalist to more of a health coaching component and more functional, holistic medicine, which I think is fantastic. And, after 20 years, kind of like you, she just threw her hands in the air and said, I can't really help people in this hospital setting. And so I'm going to start my own practice, which I think is fantastic. I know that there's more to the story because we had a little pre-interview chat. I told you I recently spoke with Dr. Elisa Song. We aired her podcast on the Faster Way podcast here. And I asked her about vaccinations specifically for kiddos because I have 5 kids. I've gone through a few different strategies when it comes to vaccinations for my kids. When I was in Ohio, I had a certain perspective. I had a certain pediatrician. When I came to Florida, it became increasingly difficult to find a well-known kind of renowned pediatrician who I trusted. And I started doing more of my own research and kind of defying the traditional path. And in fact, my 4th and 5th baby I had at home, delivered them at home, most empowering scenario, and then didn't immediately take them into a pediatrician's office to get shots. In fact, ultimately found a pediatrician and come to my house. And then I handed her my plan of here's my plan of how I'm going to increase the resilience for my kiddos and raise them. But tell me just a little bit about your journey on the West Coast as it related to vaccinations.
Absolutely. And first of all, I want to just say there's so many things you said that made me so happy right there. So many things. Congratulations on your home births.
Oh, thank you.
So for me, a lot of my journey involved vaccinations actually. And I guess probably the conventional world would call me a little more rogue. And that's true. So I moved to California from Oregon and got my California medical license. This was in 2016 and didn't know about SB 277 or SB 276. You know, SB 277 was passed first in 2015, I believe, and required very stringent rules about what you could provide vaccine exemptions for fragile children. Now, the CDC recommends 72 doses before the age of 18. I didn't say 72 shots. I said doses because many of them are in multi-vials. And in my professional opinion, and what I've witnessed through patients, many hundreds of patients, is that not every child can handle that burden, because many of the things and adjuvants that are found in vaccines are things we would avoid orally. Now, when you bypass the gut barrier and you're putting it straight into the subcutaneous tissue, you're really removing our gut microbiome, which is one of our biggest protectors from toxins, chemicals that we might come into contact with every day. So I started, because of my strong beliefs, I started doing vaccine exemptions in California. I was tag teaming them with a pediatric naturopath, Dr. Ilana Rumel, who I really respect at Nourish Medical Center. And we followed the rule to a T. But when they passed SB 276, that gave them the authority to go and finally check to see if the vaccine rules were being followed. And that allowed them to subpoena patients' medical records without their permission, open them up to check the legitimacy of the vaccine exemption. And many doctors, hundreds of us, had got in trouble, in fact, many for minutia, not signing charts in time, not doing the physical exam exactly how they wanted, or not testing every single adjuvant to make sure there was an allergy, which is not the way the body works. It tips out of homeostasis. It doesn't need an allergy to every single ingredient in a vaccine. So eventually they came for me. And they offered me 3 years probation, 90 hours of their re-education, and a stipulated license with no more exemptions. The whole purpose in this, Amanda, was if any disciplinary action was put on a physician's record, that annulled all the other vaccine exemptions they'd done for fragile children. And I had done 5th or 6th most in San Diego County in that year. So unfortunately, I surrendered my medical license, and I felt that was the bigger play. At the time, I was not seeing patients for money, but because I liked it. I was making money other ways, and I thought I could media blitz them. But everyone was still afraid during COVID to talk about, especially vaccines. And so the only person that interviewed me was Dr. Peter McCullough.
Oh, got it.
Pretty good though for one shot.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I feel very strongly about this topic. I feel as though I am on the right side of history. What we did with the adults with COVID is what we've been doing with children for years in certain states that have passed this law. And so for me, until that day comes, which I hope is in my lifetime, and I hope my license is reinstated, I stand by my word that I was helping to save children.
Wow. Wow. And now you've become a mold and Lyme expert, which I'm so excited to chat with you about. And I'll share just a little history and story with you. So as I mentioned, I have 5 kiddos. Last winter was really difficult. I have a theory that viruses became super viruses and learned how to get around masks and all the hand washing and so forth. And 2 winters ago, hardest winter of my life. This past winter, 2024, almost worse. My 12-year-old and my 1-year-old ended up getting a 100-day cough.
Oh.
And it was absolutely horrendous. You have heard, but I had never heard a cough like this in my life. Every cough looked like a asthma attack. I mean, just sounded exactly like a whooping cough.
Yep.
But my oldest was actually in Ohio years ago, vaccinated for whooping cough. My youngest, I believe kind of maybe it was like a variation of a whooping cough, but it was just getting around all of the vaccines. And no one was testing positive for it, but it was essentially the 100-day whooping cough. So anyway, I was posting just a few things on Instagram and asking for advice from colleagues who are doctors or wellness professionals, and even friends or Faster Way clients who were dealing with the same thing in other areas of the country. And many, many, many women would send me videos of kids who were dealing with mold and say, have you tested your house for mold? Well, long story short, I did test my house twice, not once, twice for mold. It didn't come back positive, but I still wonder if maybe that had a part to play. So how did you get into mold? How did you become a mold expert? And tell me just a little bit about what we need to be aware of with the whole concept of mold.
Absolutely. So part of the way I work is I want to get to the root cause for people. And I want to be able to ask why until I don't have any more whys to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And when looking at why people are chronically ill, or why do you have this ICD-10 code that the insurances use to bill your insurance, and it's a label, is that root cause? Is lupus root cause?
Yeah.
Is Hashimoto's? No, that's a name. They give you a pill or a Band-Aid. It still doesn't fix the body's haywire, out of homeostasis, process that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started to ask why were these mystery chronic illness patients, what led me to mold was asking all that. That led me to Lyme. That led me to water damaged homes. That led me to a lot of different environmental toxicities like glyphosate and plastics and things. And it led me to heavy metals. And those are really, and trauma, of course, those are really the root causes. And so I got really involved and wanted to learn about how water damage can affect people, because in my medical training, we weren't taught any of that. We were taught about aspergillus, which is this, mucormycosis that gets in the sinuses and is deathly ill for people, can really kill people. And they'll be in sepsis if they have it. And there's no way you'd miss it. That's what we were taught. Or it causes allergy symptoms for people, but that's it. Itchy, runny eyes, nose, nothing else. But when I started to see people, I saw a different story. I saw something that we were not taught in school. And the stats I learned were really concerning. 80% of houses have previous water damage. 80? I mean, this is a problem. And then 40 to 45% have current water damage. So then you see all these people with these mystery symptoms that we can't figure out what's wrong with them. And could it be that it's the local environment? Could it possibly be that it's not your genes, that you weren't just born defective, that something is wrong? Could it possibly be that our environment is toxic, the society is wrong, that we're living in houses that are built with toxic chemicals and paints and adhesives, and we leave them open for the elements to be rained on in the wood and particle board? Stachyboitries is a toxic black mold that eats gypsum, which is drywall. Ironically, that never dries when it gets wet. What are all these toxic building products we're using with these stats and these people with chronic health issues that can't figure it out? So for people who might suspect that you live in a water damaged home, you really need to look at certain specific symptoms, certain telltale signs, like, are you worse in the house and better when you go on vacation and you think it's just you don't have stress from work? Did your kid have asthma and then they outgrew it when they moved from the house? Did your kids have potty training and then start bedwetting again when you moved into a new place? That's not your kid. And I have seen mold just really come out in different ways depending on people and their genes. If you're sensitive, you can be bedbound from this.
Wow.
And that's 1 in 4 people have the DNA haplotype, genetic haplotype, which predisposes them. Their body can't even recognize if they're in mold. It doesn't even see the foreign intruder inside the body to remove it. Then there are people who have maybe 1 allele of this gene. They don't have the full gamut of the gene that makes them sensitive. And they're fine, but over the years, it chips away at their health until they're diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And so this is what I'm trying to bring awareness to, not to scare people, but hey, there's nothing wrong with your body. It's a machine made from God that is always trying to save you.
Yeah.
It's our environment and our traumas and the toxins. That's the
Mm.
problem. So this is why I really want to promote, or not promote, but bring awareness and knowledge to this subject, because
Yep.
I think it's being missed by many doctors out
Yeah.
there.
I love your point that we weren't created with a defect. And so if something doesn't feel right, then something probably is wrong, but it could be from your environment. It's interesting because for me personally, you would almost think talking to me that I do have a mold problem. But again, I had my current house tested twice, but let me just share like some symptoms. So,
Yes.
and it could just be Florida. So when I'm in Florida, I have constant sore throats.
Mm.
Last year, the year before, several years, but almost every third day, it feels like I'm fighting something. I feel more tired in the afternoon than I should based on my lifestyle. I have a runny nose, specifically when I start working out. My clients know and
Mm.
they're listening and laughing because I always have a tissue with me. When I went to Costa Rica last year for vacation, I felt great.
Uh-oh.
I didn't take any supplements. My energy was through the roof. I needed 1 to 2 less hours of sleep. Now,
Huh.
I wasn't working, so the stress of my regular day-to-day life wasn't there. But I then started going back quite often to Costa Rica last year. And I would notice a marked difference when I was in Costa Rica versus Florida, to the extent that last year I bought a home in Costa Rica and now I'm
Mm.
splitting time. So I have 2 kids in Florida. They have literally 2 more days of school. So by the time this broadcasts are finished with school, I have 2 kids in school in Costa Rica at an IB international school. And then I have the baby. But when I'm in Costa Rica, I feel amazing. No allergies, no sore throat.
Mm.
I'm not taking allergy meds. I'm not taking my other supplements. My energy is through the roof all day. I'm sleeping better. I'm sleeping less overall,
Yep.
just because I don't need as much sleep. Popping up at, before the sunrise, where when I'm in Florida, I just don't feel as well. And usually I'll come here for 5 days at a time. By the 5th day, I feel like I'm coming down with something.
Oh,
I
man.
get on a plane, go to Costa Rica, but I've had my house tested twice recently. What's going on?
It's another great teaching point, because this is how nuanced a lot of the functional testing is. Now, I love functional medicine. I want to get to the root cause. I think it's much more updated than a lot of conventional testing, but it still has nuances. So do you know what kind of test you did?
I didn't do a test on myself. I did a test on the house.
Do you know what they did?
I don't. It was like an inspector type person.
So probably some sort of air analysis.
Mhm.
The only test I recommend right now, there's a couple different ones I recommend, but the main one that I look at, and it's nuanced as well too, is called an ERMI test, an Environmental Relative Moldy Index.
Okay.
And that's developed by the Environmental Protection Agency. And a lot of the remediators and building biologist people, unless they're in the know, they don't do ERMIs. They do just another type of air analysis, which with an ERMI, you can do it yourself.
Oh, how do you
Yeah.
spell that?
ERMI.
Okay.
And you can do it yourself. I like Real-Time Labs or Enviro Biomix.
Mhm.
And I usually have people choose the more upgraded option from each of those companies, because people just think mold and water damage, but that's not the case. Actually, the number one bacteria that is found in water damage is a gram-positive bacteria that's also found in the soil called Actinomycetes. And there's also gram-negative endotoxic bacteria, which are very, very toxic to the DNA. They produce this thing in their cell wall that actually can attack some of our DNA too. So I have people check for not just mold, but gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria too. So there could be a number of different things going on with you that have been missed by the testing, or they didn't test everything.
Got it.
And so your symptoms, though, are a little bit of a red flag for me, for sure. If you include brain fog with the fatigue,
Yeah, I wouldn't say brain fog as much, but the cough. So my daughter's cough and then my son's cough. Now he's in Costa Rica now, no cough.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Something like that. People ask me all the time, what is this? It's usually lingering in the environment. And even if they don't have exact mold they found in the house, that could still be a moisture problem or a ventilation problem. We really want the humidity less than 60% in a house to prevent mold growth. And if your house is energy efficient, which usually places are nowadays, that's great for energy, but it's not great for airflow and how nature intended. Mold is in the environment. It's everywhere. Its job is to digest organic waste or toxins, right? Dead things. But if you don't have airflow to prevent it, the way the ecosystem does, because we're building houses out of what nature designed, then you will have problems still. So it's almost like I would I would have you do a do-it-yourself ERMI test, and I would refer a building biologist to you.
Okay. Yeah, I would totally try that. And I think having a bit of a plan for me is the key, because again, I've had my husband get 2 different inspectors in there and check for mold and this and that. But I think the other problem I have is with oak, and our entire area in Florida is covered in oak pollen.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, it was like carpet on the ground. It was so much oak pollen. I think I've heard a rumor that here there were too many male trees planted and not enough female trees. And so the female trees aren't like absorbing up the pollen.
That's actually a human problem in Florida too. There's too many men.
Yeah. That's probably true as well. But the oak plus, it also feels like I'm in Florida, I'm in Costa Rica, like it is humid. It almost is like a losing battle. Like, wouldn't every house have mold?
The thing with mold is it gets the mitochondria first and it gets the liver first. And the other thing about the liver is if it's overburdened, it almost kind of spills over and starts releasing these noxious substances like histamine and things when it's overburdened. And people will come out with seasonal allergies. And that's a sign that they often need a little bit of a liver cleanse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. And, we have limited time and I have about 100 questions to ask you, but
no worries.
Let's talk about that, because that resonates with me. I know that I've had a suboptimal liver, and I'm sure many of the people listening would as well. And they're saying, oh my gosh, I have seasonal allergies. I've never in my life had seasonal allergies. So talk about how to really support your liver for detoxification.
For sure. I mean, welcome to America, where 1 in 3 people have a liver problem. And most of us don't know it.
Wow.
Actually, if you even include high fructose corn syrup or have glyphosate in your system, it's going to be an issue. And then the liver holds anger and resentment, frustration. So if anyone is dealing with those problems, that also might be a clue that your liver needs some TLC. And
yeah, I for sure need that this week.
So there's many gentle ways to support the liver. And then we have some things for more pro-season detoxifiers, if you will. And so the gentle way is something like a castor oil pack. Get you some really nice castor oil, a cloth. There's certain types of cloth they make with it. You can actually tie them on so it's not as messy. I like to put people in the sauna so they have heat in the sauna with it.
Interesting.
That actually helps to move the bile a little bit for people, which puts them in parasympathetic mode. And there's no healing that can take place until you're in rest and digest. So it's very important. The other thing is the liver loves bitter herbs. And if you think about the American diet, how often do we have bitter things in our diet? Sour Patch Kids, anyone? Really? I know, gross.
Not in my community.
No, thank God. I mean, but the regular Americans, they don't even know what a sour taste is in their diet.
That's so true.
Bitter herbs. So the liver loves bitter herbs. So things like dandelion, milk thistle, gentian root. There's so many lovely things for the liver. And the liver also makes the bile, which is then stored in a little container called the gallbladder that hangs from the liver right on the right upper quadrant, right here in the abdomen. And so bile is an integral part because the liver makes it. And bile also can get thick and stagnant. You've heard of gallstones. That's a thick, kind of thick, sticky type of bile that's now kind of congealing into stones. And so people can have just thick bile that doesn't move, and stagnation breeds disease in every organ. So I usually will add a bile salt called TUDCA, taurouracil-deocholic acid. Now that helps the bile move properly. You've got bitter herbs helping the liver work. You've got castor oil packs moving the bile as well. The T in TUDCA stands for taurine.
Yep.
And that crosses the blood-brain barrier and helps with calming people down and cognition.
Interesting. I have taurine in my cabinet right now, but I've never taken it. I've heard a lot about the castor oil. So we have a Faster Way certified coach, Christy Thomas. She's a top coach who struggled with hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and she uses the castor oil pack a lot.
Yeah.
But I've never tried it. I have a sauna, so I would just get one of the packs, put some castor oil in it, and it just is on the outside of your body, yet it works.
Absolutely.
That's so interesting.
Because everything, when it's touching the skin, it impacts us. Our skin is the biggest organ. It also has, you can feel everywhere. So it has a nervous system everywhere in our body. So this helps to, in studies shows it helps even natural killer cells, which help fight viruses and cancer, to congregate to the area. There's so many different benefits for castor oil. And it's just a very gentle way to wake up that liver and the gallbladder.
Oh, okay. I totally need to try that. I'm going to get get some recommendations from you on what castor oil pack you recommend, and then I'll do it in the sauna, and that's perfect timing because then I get a shower right afterwards. So
It's perfect.
I'm sure it's going to be a little messy.
Worth it though.
Okay, let's loop back to Lyme disease. So you mentioned the mold, but then also the Lyme disease. What are some symptoms that we need to be looking out for? Maybe some of our listeners even are like, oh my God, finally I'm hearing from someone who's giving me hope. What are we looking out for with Lyme disease in particular?
First of all, guys, you can cure Lyme disease. You can. If someone told you that, it's not true. So you can put Lyme into remission. Everyone asked me that first off the bat because they're so terrified from everything they've heard. And Lyme disease can be a scary thing. It is definitely a journey. But if you guys suspect this, what you want to look for, and remember, it's called the great imitator for a reason, because depending on people's genes and sensitivities, it can present a number of different ways when pushed through their specific DNA, right? So you want to look for brain fog, again, very vague. Fatigue, again, very vague. Migrating joint pains are a big one. So, one day your wrist hurts or maybe your fingers hurt. The next day you get up, your ankle hurts. Weird things like this. And then there are co-infections that often come with Lyme that have their own specific set of symptoms. Bartonella is connected to bipolar disorder and rage episodes.
Wow.
Your shins will feel like shin splints when you walk. You'll have certain rashes that look like stretch marks. They'll have ice pick headaches where they can pinpoint it with a finger where it is.
Wow.
Babesia, intracellular parasite that comes with Lyme. Night sweats. Shortness of breath or air hunger, fatigue, brain fog. These are very specific symptoms depending on the co-infection. But if you have one of the co-infections, you have Lyme.
Wow.
People say, it's not my part of the country. It's everywhere now.
Wow.
It's everywhere. They've spread everywhere. So we really have to look again at these people with a genetic haplotype that is very sensitive to mold, that makes them sensitive to Lyme. They can't recognize pathogen proteins in their body to get rid of them. Makes them very sick.
Wow.
And the worst part about Lyme disease for me is that the CDC back in the late 80s, early 90s decided to make a vaccine for Lyme. The vaccine was an epic failure. It caused all kinds of side effects in people, so they withdrew it from the market.
Wow.
Now, to make this vaccine, they had to remove two of the most specific markers for Lyme disease in the testing because it interfered. If you got the vaccine, it would make a false positive on the test. When they took the vaccine off the market, they did not add those two specific markers back to the testing. So now everyone who gets tested, if they come up negative, it's because they removed the two most specific markers.
Wow.
And it drives me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many people get a Western blot, about 40 to 60% can be false negative within that range. And that's the screening test for Lyme disease recommended by the CDC and medical doctors like me.
Yeah.
So really, for me, you have to be a little more savvy with the functional testing. It is a lot more expensive. Most of the time, insurances don't cover it.
Yeah.
And so this is where people get into trouble with Lyme disease. They have these symptoms and then they can't find anyone to help them.
I was born in New York City, but lived in Long Island for a while. And in 2019, went back to the Hamptons to spend the summer. And oh my goodness, I remember seeing so many ticks and starting to feel uneasy about even being there with my children because most people I know from the Hamptons have Lyme disease. Most people.
Oh, yeah.
And their dog.
Oh, yeah.
Most people and their dog. So I'm like, I want out of here. Like this, I don't even feel comfortable.
Well,
right
you're
now.
right across the way from Lyme, Connecticut and Plum Island.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I just remember finding ticks on myself and the kids and thinking, I'm actually not going to come back. So Dr. Jess, tell us where we can find you online and connect with you.
Absolutely. So there are levels to how everyone can interact with me. The first level is the free level. So come follow me on Instagram. It's Dr. Jess MD. And I put a lot of free educational information out there. I love making content. I love helping people. I love to make a dent in a lot of the misinformation that we've been provided in the conventional system. So come follow me there. And then I also have a website, drjessmd.com. I have a free how to kill, bind, sweat, which is my trademark protocol that involves the sauna and taking binders to pull things out. And I also answer everyone's questions that they ask me on there about anything from endometriosis to Hashimoto's. If you guys really like my information and you want more, you can join my membership, which is Wellness Plus, and that's app.drjessmd.com. And that's where I teach you how to be your own best doctor. It's almost like a Holistic WebMD.
I love it. Okay, one final question.
Sure.
So is there a single non-negotiable that you can share with my community that you do in your daily routine to stay healthy in spite of all of these toxins?
Yeah, you're going to love the answer. It's movement.
Love it.
Every single day. Every single day. I mean, there's one day a week I take off, and not because I feel like I need it. I do know I need it, but if I had my way, I think it's a privilege to move your body.
Yes.
And sweat. I think if people knew how important sweating was, they'd do it in the sauna if they couldn't move their body, because you can release more heavy metals, PCBs, and toxins in sweat than you can in feces or urine.
Yes.
And so that is the most healing thing. And then on top of that, you're producing endorphins. It's the best mental health treatment in the world. Every day, guys.
And we're going to get you in the Faster Way workouts, and you're going to love them. Yes.
I'm joining. I'm going to be a member.
Okay. So good. So good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm thrilled that we were able to spend time together. I'm even more excited that we're neighbors, and we can't wait to hear more from you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.